Hey guys, Bryce here from Flex Cortex. All content on the Flex Cortex podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not a substitution for medical advice from a qualified health professional. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Hello everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Flex Cortex. Today I'll just be myself and I'll be talking to you guys about progress. More importantly, metrics and some things that you can track so that you're always seeing progress in the gym and outside the gym. Because fitness, more importantly, is about improving your overall lifestyle and sustainability, right? So we're going to be talking about some of the very common things that I hear in the gym that I've just experienced working in person and in the online scene. I'm going to be going through some of these things that I often hear and other PTs that I've talked to have also heard before. And we're going to try to talk about those things and shed a little bit of light on them so that way you guys have a little bit more direction. Just because I have been in the space now for about 8 years, and these are all things that I wish that I knew back then. So if I can help you guys now, then I'll happily do that. So the very first thing is often the weight on the scale has gone up. What happened? So maybe you're doing your first check-in with a client, and let's say that the weight has gone up. So all of a sudden they're panicking. They're wondering, well, what happened? I shouldn't have gained 2 pounds. I've been coming, seeing you twice a week. I've been eating better, all that stuff. So obviously people can get very fixated on the scale, and it can actually result in a lot of complications, and it can obviously make people feel really insecure. And I think that has a large play of social media, just because we are all so influential, and the way that society is we're all very involved in the online space. So we're seeing a lot of people that are, our ideal body, quote unquote. And we all think that that's how we should look versus how you actually look. So one thing I want to talk about here is that there's a good chance you could have put on muscle, because when you're, working out initially, your body's adapting to a new stress that you've never had before. So your body's shocked, and you're likely putting on extra tissue that you never had before, or maybe you're actually eating more than you were eating before. So a lot of it could just be water too. So it's important to make sure that you're, weighing yourself at the same time, and also remembering too that there's a lot of other external factors that play a part, that can be contributing to your weight gain or your weight loss. So try not to get too fixated on the scale. I tell all my clients it's really important to take pictures. So I'll encourage them to take pictures, if you want to, every week, every 2 weeks, every 4. And then obviously doing some sort of body fat analysis just to assess their overall body fat, their fat mass, their fat percentage, looking at their dry lean, and looking at roughly their water weight, just seeing how much they're carrying on that given day, right? Because these all are going to play a factor in the weight that you're currently sitting at of that day. Also, it depends what time you weigh them, right? If you're weighing them at 5 or 6 p.m., chances are they probably had 2 or 3 meals. So if they're a little bit heavy from when you did your initial meeting with them, there's that to keep in mind too, right? The next one here would be, I can't lift the same amount of weight as I did last week. Have I plateaued? So often in the gym, especially, I see people that are slow. You'll see a spike and an increase in weight when you start working out, right? You'll see weight sort of fly up. You'll be adding weight every week. Once you kind of end the beginner gains, the newbie gains, you're going to get to a point where the weight won't be as linear. It won't be going up as much. It'll be up to a certain point, but then it'll be an up down trend, right? Because there's a lot of factors that contribute to progress, and progress itself is not linear. It's not just a straight line. So this is when it's important to keep in mind other variables to track, right? Are you looking at the overall volume that you're working out in a session, right? Maybe you can't do a certain weight for 3x5, but maybe you should just add a set, right? So like let's say a 3x5 would be 15 reps, and let's say you try the 3x5 with that weight again and you can't hit it. So then what you should maybe do is drop off and like let's do a 4x4. So you're adding an extra set, but you're also decreasing the rep ranges by a little bit. So that way you're able to still get in the overall volume and the tonnage in that session, right? So a lot of other things to keep in mind, but then also to keep the progress going too, right? Like just because you can't hit a weight for a certain rep range doesn't mean you're not seeing progress. Like I'm sure if you tracked other variables or if you're looking at other aspects of the gym itself, like you were definitely seeing progress. And I think that this helps a lot with people's longevity and sustainability with the gym, because we are all creatures of habit, but we also like to be seeing some sort of direct change in what we're doing. So obviously you don't want to be putting time into something if you're not seeing anything come back from it, right? So that's why, goal setting is such an important thing too. Make sure that obviously, as well as your long-term goals, you're also setting short-term goals for yourself that you can reevaluate with your trainer, or that you can actually sit down by yourself and even reevaluate. So even if you don't have a coach, I strongly encourage that you constantly reevaluate your goals, so that way you're always going to be pushing forward and on a forward trend, instead of like, okay, well, I've hit that goal now, like let's say losing 30 pounds, and then you fall off because you didn't take the time to sit down again and make more goals for yourself. So the biggest thing from that is tracking other metrics. So, for that example, like, a 3x5, let's say you can't hit that weight, then do a 4x4. Try, adding a little bit of weight, so that way you're still able to get that volume in and you're still able to progressively overload, extra stimulus, better response, and that's gains equals gains. But yeah, again, just lots of things to keep in mind. But the biggest thing too is also just tracking what you're doing. So have a plan when you go in, at least track what you're training, so that way you're not just going in there and winging it every session. But I would highly recommend having a coach, so that way they can have something tailored to you specifically. So yeah, the next thing here would be like weight versus body comp, what actually matters. And this is kind of bouncing off the first thing again. The biggest thing here is like weight might go up, weight might go down, but the one thing that's really important to remember is like body comp. So I discussed this before with your body fat mass, your body fat percentage, your dry lean mass, your skeletal muscle, and like your water weight, right? Like all these things you can get from, I know a lot of scales will give you that, but the thing with scales is that they'll always be high, they'll always be low. Like they're never going to be exactly dead on. But that gives you a ballpark, at least of where you're at. And it does give you a way to track progress to a point. So I do recommend that people do get some sort of scale, just because they aren't super expensive. And it gives you something that you can, compare to for reference and just see how you're actually progressing, just because it will obviously give you some stats. The best thing you can do obviously would be to go in and get like a DEXA done, or go get calipers done, because that'll give you an actual accurate idea of what your fat percentage is at, what your fat mass is at, and then a DEXA will tell you like your like pretty much your muscle, your bones, and it'll give you a lot more detail as to your actual genetic structure and your anatomical layout, right? It'll tell you where your weight lies, which is actually really cool. But I do believe they cost about $100 or $150, so there is that. The next thing here I want to chat about is BMI. So BMI is body mass index, and again, I would almost say it's a little bit of I would say it's archaic. I don't use it. I know a lot of PTs don't use it, and the reasoning is because it is on like just like a line. So for those of you that are just listening, and you can't see the line that I just made with my hands, it's just a line. Like it's just going to be saying like, okay, this is where you should be, and this is where you are. This is like obese, like etc. etc. So it gives you again like a ballpark, and it also is like you should be this weight for being this height. It's all based off of the standard, and it's all based off of like a statistics. It's not like it's actually accurate to you, or accurate to other people that have used the scale either, right? So a good example of this is like when I have my BMI done, my BMI is like 31, 32. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the scale, that has me at like obese. And I've been working out for probably about 8 years. I mean, I'm not super, super lean, but there's no way that I would be obese. But again, it's basing it off of somebody who's like 5'9.5", well, 5'10" on a good day, right? That I should be, this weight for being that height. But doesn't factor in sport history, doesn't factor in train age, doesn't factor in any of these things. So I definitely would track other metrics than BMI, just because BMI is so subjective. And again, it's just a statistic that is given to you usually by a doctor, because it was given to them by some agency somewhere. One of the things too is a lot of people come into me, and they talk about stress from work. Obviously, I know that stress from a job is a very real thing, but the things to remember from that as well is that stress has a very large impact on weight. So people that typically are finding that it's really hard to lose weight or keep weight off, you'll find a trend that their stress levels are typically always very high. Um, so that has obviously a correlation with weight loss and weight gain. So it's very important to make sure that you are trying to manage your stress levels. So that's why the stress is actually something that I track with all of my clients. We track that on a week-to-week basis, and we're just seeing like how your stress levels are, as well as energy, right? Because those two kind of go hand in hand, and those can obviously be excelling your progress or hindering your progress. So it is very important to make sure that you are tracking stress as a metric, even just for yourself, right? Like, just because it could obviously be reflective of like a high weigh-in, or it could be causing you to want to stress eat, it could be causing you to drink maybe. Like, there's a lot of ways that people deal with stress differently and coping mechanisms. So it's very important that you are just keeping that in mind, as you kind of go forward with things, right? Um, the next one actually after that is sleep. So a very common thing that I hear people say when they come in is, "Oh, I haven't been sleeping much. I've been working quite a bit, or I try to eat pretty well, but my sleep isn't very good." So first of all, I just want to start off by saying that sleep is the most underrated form of recovery. As much as you want to be able to eat well to help recover, if you eat really well and you train really well, but your sleep is sporadic, it's all over the place, it's not consistent, then you could be missing on a lot of potential for progress you could be seeing, and it also could be limiting a lot of recovery. So it could be extending how long it takes you to actually recover between sessions, right? I mean, obviously affected by the overall volume of that session, and the stress being put on the body, right? So it's very important to, again, like I know we always stress the importance of having like some sort of schedule set where you're getting some sort of consistent sleep. And it's probably like beating a dead horse at this point, because like I'm sure people have all heard it so much. But I just wanted to really try to reiterate how important it is to make sure that you have a consistent sleep schedule. I know there's also lots of ways to track your sleep as well, just so that we can see your sleep quality, right? And again, stress and sleep go hand in hand. Um, Obviously, lots of people end up having really bad sleeps due to high stress, or the quality of sleep isn't as good either. So they're both very important things that you can track, that can be helping excel your progress or hinder it. Another common one is, I think I eat enough food. So a lot of people will come in and we'll chat about their nutrition, being part of the consult, and we'll sit in there and we'll just talk. And I'll ask them, okay, like roughly, if you were to guess how much you eat a day, well, first of all, I'll ask them, do you track your food? Or do you have some sort of metric that you track? Usually it's no. Um, Usually it's time, right? So it takes time to put everything in. It takes time to meal prep. So they're just like, no, I don't really track, but usually, let's say I eat 2 to 3 meals a day, right? Then you start asking them what they actually eat for those meals. Then it's like, okay, well, I eat a salad for lunch with chicken. let's say for breakfast, I eat a couple eggs and say a couple pieces of toast and let's say an orange juice and like let's say a coffee or something, right? And then you go home and you're like, okay, got to keep it light again, right? And I want to eat like let's say a salad and chicken again, just because salads are again very commonly associated with weight loss. So then you roughly calculate the calories out for that, and you're maybe saying at like 1,500, right? And then you realize that this person in front of you is, let's say they're 30, let's say they're 6 foot, let's say they're 5'8", a little bit overweight, right? Maybe a moderately active job. You're almost guaranteed that amount of food isn't even at their maintenance to like maintain weight. So it's probably not even meeting their demands of their basal metabolic rate. So I just want to talk about like again, reiterate the importance of like how important it is to be eating enough food. A good example of this is actually myself. As of recently, I started with a nutritionist at work. So I work at Mobody Windermere, and I recently started with Chris Krulicki, and he's another one of the trainers there, and he's helping me with my nutrition currently. And before, when I wasn't working with him, I was again for a little bit I was probably guessing what I was eating. So then he brought me up to what my maintenance level should be, and I've actually seen a decrease in probably about 5 pounds of water in like a week and a half. So again, it's just really, really important to know that it's good to be able to give yourself food. Like you need food, right? Like food is energy, calories are energy. Your body expends energy, and you need food as a resource. So make sure that you're obviously giving yourself the food that you need, and make sure that you just aren't going too low in your calories, right? Because most people, what they'll do is they'll go way too low, and they'll think that just because I'm eating so little, that I'm going to be losing weight. When really it's usually typically vice versa thing, right? So definitely speak with a nutritionist, or even just speak with with your trainer, and I'm sure they can help give you some suggestions for food, and kind of lead you in the right direction as far as sources go. Again, most of us as trainers aren't qualified to be giving you guys meal plans, unless we have some form of nutrition education to be able to actually assign you guys something to eat, or at least being able to tell you guys what to eat. But we are more than happy to give you guys alternatives of what to eat, and help you guys even calculate your macros, and then just finding ways that you're able to live a healthier lifestyle overall, right? Just because obviously we all realize that you guys have a life outside of work and outside of the gym, right? So I want to make sure that we're making it as easy for you guys as possible. The next one is, okay, so this is a very common one that I hear too. I just eat what my friend is eating, seems to work for them. So the thing here is what they're eating is for them. So it's the same thing for if you go onto these YouTube channels and you see like a day in the life or full day of eating. What they're eating for them is for them. So you shouldn't be going and trying to duplicate and mimic what they are eating, just because what they have laid out portion wise, what they have laid out calorie wise, what they have laid out into different meals, into different snacks, is what has worked for them. And obviously it meets their physical demands, energy demands, right? I'm not saying that you guys can't take food recipes from that, or take suggestions from that and being able to apply those into your own diet. But I want to stress the importance of not just following it and like aimlessly following it. Like you have to remember that it's for them, it's not for you. So be resourceful, and maybe if you see a recipe that you really like utilize it, throw it into your own diet, make it work with you. But don't just be following somebody's diet because you want to look like them, because everybody again is so different. We all have individual needs that you need to make sure that you're addressing. Okay. And the next one is, I'm pretty sure I drink enough water. So again, this is all part of usually the initial consult process. When I meet somebody, we chat about all these pillars of health, right? We chat about lifestyle, we chat about, sleep, and we chat about like stress and energy and food and training, right? Because they're all pillars that apply to fitness in general and helps with the overall outlook of the working out itself, right? Or even it can help lay the foundation for the program that you're going to be making for them. So it's very important to make sure that you are drinking enough water, because water can obviously affect your hormone levels. So it can affect your appetite. It can affect um, your hydration obviously as well, which is an obvious one. So it can obviously, if you're not drinking enough water, you can be a little drier, which can be affecting weigh-ins. It can also be affecting, like the biggest one is probably your hunger and your appetite. So it can be making you want to crave more salty or sweet foods, which will usually result in people actually going and buying salty and sweet foods, right? So usually I find that if people tend to get snacky at night, um, we'll typically evaluate stress levels. We'll typically evaluate other external factors, but then I'll also just look at their water intake, right? Like, did you go most of the day without having any water? Then you go home, maybe you haven't really had any water, maybe you've had a glass of water, and that's probably why you're reaching for the chips, right? So it's very important to just remember that water does play a large factor on, um, obviously hydration, right? Obviously your kidney function, and then it obviously plays a large factor on just your appetite and your hunger. So it is one of those things that again is often overlooked, and people only drink when they're thirsty. But if you're drinking at the point when you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. And then obviously too, like if you're in some sort of sport, or if you're just working out, it is very important to be replenishing sweat that you're losing, and then also trying to replenish that salt, right? Because you're losing a lot of salt and sodium as you sweat as well. The last one here was, I've been following push pull legs for years. It seems to work for me. So lots of the time we have people come in and they have something for reference that they maybe did 5 years ago. So you 5 years ago isn't you now. And it's very important to remember that you have to adapt and change accordingly, right? Obviously, as you've changed as a person, as your physical demands have changed, maybe your occupation has changed, maybe you've adapted some more injuries, life too, right? A program that worked for you 5 years ago, or maybe like 10 years ago, there's no guarantee to work for you now, even though people want to go back because let's say they saw great results off of it before. But there's a lot of factors you have to consider now that are different than they were then. Also, like let's say, you were a lot younger then, you were able to recover faster, you're able to handle more volume, you're able to just like repair tissue quicker, right? Just because you are younger. And as youths, typically you're just able to recover quicker from stress being put on the body. So that's just some things to consider, right? But I also want to just talk about again the importance of having a trainer. If I could redo it over again, I would probably get a trainer right from the start. Like I started working out probably when I was 15 or 16. For those of you that know me, or for those of you that have listened to a lot of the podcasts, yeah, 15 or 16. And at that point in time, I did a lot of my own research, but a lot of it was just based off of like articles. A lot of it was based off of what I had seen online. A lot of it was trial and error based. A lot of it was just kind of winging it. And if I could redo it now, I see that as being wasted time that I could have been utilizing if I was with a coach, right? And I could probably be further ahead than I am now if I actually had just taken the time to hire somebody, even for 6 months or for a year, right, to lay a solid foundation before taking on this journey myself. So again, it's never a bad idea to ask for help, guys. And we're obviously all here to help you. And if we can't help you, a lot of us are willing to lead you in the right direction of somebody that can help you, just because it's very important that you guys obviously align well and that you vibe well with your PT team, with your coach, because you have to trust them, just because they obviously are going to be helping you get to your goals, right? And you obviously want to make sure that you're working with somebody that you can see potential in, and obviously see some growth in that regard as well. So I hope that these points have given you guys some more insight on things to track. Again, just like metrics that you guys should be tracking, or some things that maybe will change your whole outlook. Just to ensure that you're seeing progress in some way, shape, or form. Just because I know that it can be hard sometimes if you're not seeing direct progress to want to keep going. I've talked about it in other podcasts before, but to keep your dedication and your motivation levels high, even though they are subjective, to your mind and to how you're seeing and evaluating your own progress, right? So if you're not seeing the progress you want to be seeing, just based off of certain metrics and context on certain situations, then it can obviously dictate how long you maybe try to stick with that habit for. So again, it's very important to just make sure that you have a different outlook on things and to just be trying to move forward in some way, shape, or form. To end this thing off, though, if you guys have any further questions, feel free to reach out to Tanner or myself. So my handle on Instagram, because that's usually where I'm the most active, is @_body by Bryce, and I'm more than happy to help you guys with anything that I can help you with. If I can't help you, I will be happy to lead you in the right direction of somebody that can help you and that can fulfill your needs, and at least kind of help you get on the right track there. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you to those of you that have watched the video. We're going to be trying to get to a bit more of a consistent basis here. And just going into this new year, it's very important to stay optimistic and to make sure that you're obviously working in a forward way and making sure that you're obviously trying to push yourself, so that way we can be starting off the year strong and everything like that. So thank you guys for listening, and I will talk to you all very soon.